Hmm. Hello, hello, everybody. Hello, hi, Robert and Danielle and Karen and Jeremy and Emily and Barbara Forrest. My goodness, Barbara. Lovely to see you. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I just think you're doing such wonderful things, and the way you're building community and your school. It's just, I tell all my students about you.
It's exciting. Leslie, do you know Barbara Forrest? Barbara Forrest was part of the focusing community. How many years ago? I mean, many, many years ago, right?
1968.
1968. So you must have known Jean quite well, Jen.
Well, I worked with Ralph Bierman, who was a colleague of Jean's.
Of course.
And I just met.
I worked with Ralph too.
You were, yes, that's so great.
Yeah. Wonderful. Hi, Mina.
Barbara. Hello.
It's so great to see everybody. Okay. We lost Leslie. We can't lose you. You're the person today, Leslie Ellis. Are you here?
You lost me?
I did. Your screen went blank for a minute. In fact, you're
I'm
frozen.
here, yeah.
Does Leslie look frozen, people?
Yeah. A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit slow
to Karen, no,
to respond, maybe.
I haven't got the greatest internet connection. I've moved to Salt Spring Island, and sometimes being in this remote place has its downside. So if I do freeze,
You are frozen to me.
Usually keeps the sound.
You are frozen to me now too, Leslie. Hello.
Yeah.
No, this can't be. Okay, let me just try something else.
But it should be fine, because it will catch up, and when you do your presentation, it will be fine. You won't notice it much.
How do you know that, Rashawn? You're magical. You know these things. Does everybody know Rashawn? Rashawn is my I don't know, guy wonder. Assistant, graphic designer, partner in crime. Wonderful helper.
I just wonder if we can clone Rashawn.
Everybody needs a Rashawn. Yeah, really. Thank you. Thank you. You're so helpful. Stuart's cat is here. Hello, Stuart's cat. What's Stuart's cat's name? You're muted.
Hi, Stuart's cat's name is Obi.
Obi, wonderful. Where are you, Stuart?
In Swansea in Wales.
Oh, wonderful.
It's 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yoda, so there we go. We have Star Wars cats.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get started. And Leslie, we'll just go with how we can hear you. And sometimes it's a little funny, but we'll go with it. So
I do have the option of using my phone as opposed to my somewhat dodgy internet, but we'll see. If it gets bad, I can switch and see what happens. Hopefully it won't be bad.
What do you think, Rashawn?
No, I think it'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Should be fine.
Okay.
I love that.
So yeah, I love it too. Greetings to everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And today, Leslie Ellis is with us. And Leslie, actually, you were here with us, not maybe even a year ago, right? Maybe a year ago?
It was one of the first ones. I looked it up. It was January.
Yeah, so we've been
2022, so more than a year ago.
Okay, January 2022. Okay. So I asked Leslie to come back because she's always up to something new and interesting. Incredibly beautiful person and good friend, dear friend, dear friend, and focusing trainer and focusing oriented therapist. And Leslie and Serge Pringle and I, and Serge, who's also been with us, run the Integrative Focusing Therapy Training Program. And Leslie is the author of The Clinician's Guide to Dream Work, a Routledge book. And when I wrote my book, she really helped me to find my legs in writing. An incredibly smart, talented, authentic person. So we're really lucky to have Leslie with us today. So without further ado, we usually do, Leslie, some kind of grounding practice. If you'd like to do that, or really this is your time. So,
Yeah, no,
you know, and shall I spotlight you?
Sure, if you like, yeah.
I think it's nice for people to be able to see you. Do you want me to join you, or you're good there?
I'm good.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
cool.
good. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead. Did you want to say something else?
No, we're good.
We're good. Okay, you sounded like you're about to say something. So, well, welcome everybody. It's so lovely to see so many of you, some familiar faces. And yeah, I was looking it up, and it was more than a year ago when I presented at this group. And I was talking about nightmares then as well. So some of this might be a repeat, but there's also been some new things I've discovered in the intervening time. So also I would have to say that in the intervening year, Jan has become a superstar. She's really brought the tools of focusing and embodied approaches to trauma to so many people. And she's a beautiful, timely and compassionate way of viewing addiction and trauma and treating them with the idea that they are adaptive responses, open to change. I think that's an idea that's really, its time has come, and it's been in the field for quite a long time, but it just seems like it's really got legs. And what Jan's doing is really, it's beautiful. And I really enjoy being part of it. And I think, you know, when Bessel van der Kolk's book from it was about 10 years ago that he first published The Body Keeps the Score, but it's just lately become a bestseller. And it just shows how this is really, these bottom-up approaches are finally getting the widespread recognition that people like time. So it's lovely to see. But what I would say is that in the field of nightmare treatment, this has not been the case, that there really hasn't been an updating of the way that nightmares are viewed and treated. And so that's what I've been trying to do, is really to bring nightmare treatment and the conceptualization of nightmares into the same, into the same realm, updating it so that people do consider the nervous system and the body when they're treating nightmares. And so this, and also to get the word out, because nightmares are a really big problem for a lot of people who suffer from trauma, and the knowledge of how to treat them, or even just the idea that we should ask about them, it's really sparse. There's been a study by a good friend of mine who added up basically that when people have nightmares, will they talk to someone? If they talk to someone, will they be taken seriously? Will that person know how to treat them? And if you add up all those statistics, it's like maybe 1 in 10 people that have a serious problem with nightmares will actually get help they need. And so I'm really working to get the word out. And so I'm really glad to be here just to talk about this with you all. And I just published a paper on the nightmares and the nervous system, which I think Jan gave you a link. And if you email me, I can also give you a free access to a pre-publication version if you don't have access through your institution. And it's describing basically the link between nightmares and the nervous system, and brings in the polyvagal theory and Jan's model, the felt sense polyvagal model, which I'd already been treating nightmares using focusing and the body, but then I spent, like, was it about a year, Jen, with your book? It
Yeah.
was a long time that we were
Yeah.
going back and forth with this felt sense polyvagal model. And so I was immersed in it, and it just struck me how relevant it is to nightmare treatment. So I took her beautiful diagram and put it in my article, and it really distills a lot of information in just a beautiful, easy to absorb diagram that can inform like our understanding of what keeps nightmares continuing to be a problem when they recur for people with post-traumatic stress injury. And also it shows a path to treatment. It shows a way to differentiate different kinds of nightmare sufferers. And so there's a whole bunch of information packed in it. And so it's really grateful for the for to apply the model. I think Rakan was probably the one who designed it too, so the whole team is here. And yeah, so I will talk about that, about the article and the treatment protocol. But first, I want to give you an experience, because I know that's how we all start, and I like to sort of drop in. I just wanted to chat a bit to make sure everyone was here who's going to be here, because it's hard to walk into a class in the middle of an experiential. You don't know why everybody's being so quiet. So I think we've got everybody. So, okay, so we'll start with just settling yourself in your body, finding, your feet on the ground, feeling the support underneath you. And just, I like to shift around just to find out exactly where center is. So get yourself grounded and centered in whatever way you like to do that. And I'm actually going to do a little bit longer sort of experiential, because I want to give you an experience of how I would treat a nightmare, a little mini experience of that, so that you have it in your body. And so start with just checking inside and saying hello to yourself. Jinlin's phrasing, say hello, and just see how you are in there this morning, for me anyway. And notice if there's anything between you and feeling really present and available to yourself in this moment. This is clearing a space for those who are not familiar with focusing. So you just basically notice if there's anything between you and feeling really clear and present. And if there is something like that, we don't go into it, but just move it aside in whatever way feels right. Just put it aside for the moment so you can be really present. And I'll just give you a half a minute or so of silence to do that. Now, once you're clear, I just want you to invite something in that will make you feel resourced or safe or held. So it can be a place or a person or an experience, an image, just anything that first comes to mind that brings you a sense of connection and safety. Somebody you love, a pet, a beloved person, a place. But just take a minute to find that resource. And when you have it, really just choose the first one that arrives. And when you have that resource, just immerse yourself in it. If it's a place or if it's a person or an animal, just bring it close to you and notice the felt sense of what that brings. Just take a minute to find the place in your body where that sense of comfort lives. got that, just notice the place. Maybe you could find a word or two to describe it, so that just a way that you could find this again quickly if you want to. Give it a little what in focusing is called a handle. Mine is like a warmth in my belly. So I'm going to move through this probably a little more quickly than I would normally do if it was an actual session. But what I'd like to do is just give you a little experience of how I would treat a nightmare. And so I want you to bring to mind a recent dream or a piece of a dream, or if you don't have a dream that's present, a memory or a situation. It could be something current in your life that's a little problematic, or a memory that's not resolved. Pick something that's a little sticky, but nothing too big, something manageable, just as an experiment. Pick something that might need a little bit of attention. And I'll give you a little bit of time just to find that. Can be a dream, a memory, or a current situation. Any of these will work. So once you've got something that you want to work with, we're just going to imagine this is like a stand-in for a nightmare. Just bring it to mind a little bit. Don't go deeply into it, but just enough to get the felt sense of the charge or the discomfort that it brings. Just touch into that briefly. And at the same time, now also find again that lovely sense of comfort that you just accessed. And really give that some space. Make sure that you're really in touch with that resource and that calm and that safety. And once you've got those places, you've got your image or your situation or your dream and the felt sense of calm and safe, then just imagine this situation playing forward in your imagination, like it's a pause on a movie, and then you press play, and it's just going to carry forward. And you can participate a little bit in how this goes. You're basically creating a new ending, or dreaming it forward and allowing it to carry forward to a place that might feel a little bit more resolved. So imagine the situation or the dream or the memory forward. And it can be completely fictional. It doesn't matter. What really matters is that it carries forward to a place that feels like it's a change. And I'll just give you maybe a full minute to do that, to just let your dream or image carry forward. Just another 20 seconds or so you can start to consolidate or solidify what's happened with your image or your dream. And as it carries forward, also notice how it might change how it's held in your body, if it does. And just as you're ready, you can bring your attention back into the Zoom room. So I'd love to hear from a couple of you about how this very mini session went. If this were a nightmare, this is the process of rescripting, and it runs through virtually every new modern nightmare treatment. It's simple and powerful, and it's just basically dreaming the dream onward. And it changes how the nightmare is held in the body. So it can actually change the dream, even sometimes stop a nightmare. Simple as that. So yeah, I'm curious. Somebody's having problems with hearing. Am I a bit too soft? Can you guys all hear me okay? I can't really see everybody, but yeah.
I can hear you fine.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe turning up the volume from your end. Okay, so yeah, I'd love to hear, I can't, is there a way to see? I guess maybe Rakan can see if anybody's hand is up. I just like to hear anybody who wants to share the experience of that dreaming the dream forward. Yes.
Mina raised her hand.
Hi, Mina. Yeah, there we go.
Mina?
Now we can see.
Yes.
Mina, do you want a spotlight?
No, I'm okay.
All right. Okay. Okay.
So Leslie, I actually have a different question, if that's okay for me to ask. in
Sure.
relation
Yeah.
to
Of course,
nightmare.
yeah.
Can nightmares be so difficult or activating that people actually can't remember, and yet they suffer, that they experience it, and they don't remember the nightmare? Does that make sense?
Yes. Mhm. Yes. Yes, people can have a memory. Well, it's similar to, when you have a memory of, or a knowledge that you've been dreaming these wild dreams all night, but you have a sensation of having dreamt, but you don't know what you dreamt. And so the same is true of nightmares. You can feel like in your dreams you are having a struggle and something scary, and yet not have content. And you can still work with that in the same way that you can work with the felt sense. You can find the felt sense of the, what is recalled in the body. And I do think that when that happens, there's some dissociation going on. There's a way that maybe the image is not available because our body's actually protecting us from it. A lot of implicit trauma work can be done through dreams and through working with representative images or pieces of memory that come through dreaming without having to go through the story, because sometimes that can actually just cause more distress. And what the nightmares seem to be doing, and what this process seems to be doing, is to not necessarily rehash the memory, but to dissipate the charge, to remember and contact it just enough to dissipate the charge. And I think that's what dreams are trying to do, and what recurrent nightmares are not successfully doing, because the charge is so great, the person wakes up in the middle of the dream and doesn't get to complete the nightmare. And so that's why sometimes people need help doing it. And that's why I think this process is so helpful. Yeah. Nancy has hi. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Leslie. I had the weirdest dream last night, and this was such a fabulous exercise where it was, of course, I was back in high school and lots of weird people in it and everything, but there was this sense of pressure that I can't do it. And just allowing the dream to move forward, what came was it's okay to stand on the sideline. And just with that, there was just like this release of, of this tightness. And then the meaning came of what it means for me in my life. So thank you for that. That was really interesting.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. And what will happen, so what I've discovered, it's a good example, is this is something you dreamt about it because it was stuck in some way in your body, and your dreaming is trying to resolve it, but it doesn't always succeed. And then this process it's kind of like continuing the dreaming, but with the help of having company, having some deliberate resourcing and calming, and then the dream can kind of finish its job and it won't come back. So in a simple example, you can see it applies to much more difficult disturbing dream lives. So thank you for that, Nancy. It's a great example.
Leslie, can you
Yes.
say a little bit about your way of understanding dreams and nightmares and polyvagal theory?
Yeah, I have a little presentation queued up, which really covers all that. So I'll take a few more questions and then I'll go
Okay.
into that with in a more systematic way, because I've got.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. Thanks. Also, Annette.
Hi, Leslie. I
Hi.
appreciate you coming on and sort of opening this dialogue. I've been working with trauma survivors around nightmares. And I'm thinking of this one person in particular where she's done a lot of polyvagal work and she's very resourced. And we've been reimagining the endings of her nightmares, and they do resolve. You're absolutely right about that. The place where it feels like she's still stuck is when it's getting ready for her bedtime. She feels some anticipatory anxiety about how the sleep time will go, because she'll wake up from the nightmares with bad headaches. And will wake up sympathetically activated from the nightmare. So even though we do the sort of the repatterning after, which helps her feel better after, it's that experience of waking up with it in the middle of the night that's now the triggering element for her. Can you speak a little bit about how you might work with that with a client?
Yes, I have a really good solution for that, which is to teach them to do this. It's interesting you've got Matthias next to you, who's got his hand raised, because he participated as a therapist in my original study where I worked with refugees treating their nightmares. And it was his client, believe it or not, who just spontaneously took this way of working and started doing it in the middle of the night when he woke up from a nightmare. And that's one thing I would suggest. I've taught this to a whole group of people starting in January, and I've been getting this wonderful feedback. One person in particular said their client said, "You have to write to Leslie and say thank you for this, because I wake up from a nightmare and it takes me hours to settle and go back to sleep. But doing this protocol right in the moment of imagining calming in the body and then dreaming it forward," she said within 20 minutes, she's able to get back to sleep. And so I think if your client is empowered to do that for herself in the middle of the night, she might then she'll have a sense of that she can do something, and it might take away some of that fear of going to sleep.
That makes perfect sense. I think she would go to bed feeling more resourced if a nightmare comes up in the middle of the night, like, oh, I can handle this in the middle of the night. So that's beautiful. Thank you. Really appreciate
you're
that.
welcome. You're welcome. Matthias, hello. So good to see you.
Hi, same here, Leslie. Thank you for guiding us through the practice. Just wanted to share my experience. I work with something that kind of helped me to ground in a place that is close to the beach, close to English Bay where I live, and feeling that in my heart. And the word that came to me was soft heart. And then it came a piece of dream that it was, I remember that it was going to a set without knowing the lines, and everybody was mad at me. And well, the dream stopped there. So I used both scenarios, and what came the end, I could complete the dream. I mean, if in a fictional way, and that I could deliver my lines, and I felt, because when I had the dream, it was more kind of feeling anxious, tense, and this possibility of using the resource gave me some softened heart. I was more grounded, a little bit, helped me to I remember what we did when we did the work with the refugees, helped me to be more at ease with the whole situation, right? The dream.
Thank you, Matthias. Yeah, I think that's really key, the resource and the kind of body that you bring to the work before you rescript the dream. And it's not in any of the other protocols, that they're much more just a matter of fact, just come up with a dream ending, doesn't matter how you do it or what it is. And I don't believe that's true. I think it really matters, actually, the kind of body that you bring to the process. It really colors. So we know our responses are state dependent, and especially when we wake up from a nightmare, there's lots of fear. And if we just try to carry it forward from there, it's going to be more of the same. So I think it's really important to shift the state to safety, to ventral vagal. And then when you carry the dream forward, it's going to be something constructive. Okay, so Barbara, and then I'll move on to my my description. Hi, Barbara. You need to unmute.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
So I wanted to share a different kind of dream and give you some more material to work with here. I like to do inner parts work with dreams. And so I chose a nightmare that I used to have a lot. It was a recurrent kind of dream. So what it was is, I'm in my childhood home and it's dark, it's nighttime, and I'm feeling very scared. And there's somebody dangerous outside trying to get in the house. And I'm running around the house, so checking to make sure all the doors are locked, and it's scared that the door's not going to be locked properly and it's going to get in. And also my resource was, in a canoe trip in Algonquin Park on an island, and I did some very deep work with a very deep fear, and it felt very calm. And so my resource is being able to be with, even my deepest fears. And so it was an encompassing presence was my word, my phrase. And so I took that to the dream, and the playing it forward was to start to have a relationship with this scary presence outside that was trying to get in, and to send love and light. And I wasn't quite ready to seemed like a male figure to let him in. So I made a fire, a warm fire, and gave him a blanket and sort of brightened things up. And then I stationed myself at a bay window looking out into the backyard where he was, and he came up to the window, and we started to dialogue, and what I got feeling from it was that he was representing my child self, and sort of the parts of my child self that I didn't like, and that I should have been better, kind of thing, and instead of being scared, was entering into a dialogue, and of course there's more to come to just find out what that part can, like, I've of course been working on with that part, what it can bring to me and how to care for it better in present time, but that's what I did inside.
really a beautiful example as well, in that there's many ways to carry the dream forward. And one of the things that I recommend, if it's available, if the dream character isn't too threatening, is to turn toward, have a dialogue, befriend it. And then what happens very often is that the threat it's not as threatening as it appears. It's usually just really comes in a nightmarish quality because it's desperate for your attention. And it brings up really the sense of that there are actually maybe a couple of different kinds of nightmares, at least two. And one is that some of them are direct replicas of trauma, and they have the quality of recurrent repeating of the trauma event. And those are a different quality in that they represent unmetabolized trauma that's trying to really they're not succeeding. If the dream is recurring, it means it's trying again and again, and it's really problematic. It's one of the main characteristics of post-traumatic stress injury. And one thing you can do is use that as a bit of a way to diagnose, because the closer a dream is to the original trauma, the less it's been metabolized. And as the dream starts to shift, as it will basically indicate that this memory is being assimilated, being managed and digested. And then there's the kind of dreams where nightmares can also they're not necessarily representing trauma. They can represent really intense emotion, things that really want our attention, that start off as quieter dreams and get louder if we ignore them, and that can appear as frightening characters, but when we turn toward them can be like what you described, Barbara, as aspects of ourselves that have been, to use IFS language, have been exiled, or aspects of ourselves that really we have somehow ignored, and they become larger. So nightmares are interesting in that they are, everybody has them. They're within the realm of normal. So I mean, sometimes they need clinical attention, sometimes they don't. And I'm going to describe why. I have a slide for that, but I think I'll just switch over to my slideshow now and go through quickly some of the most important things. I won't get to it all because I think it's really a longer presentation. But let me just share my screen here. Okay. I'm going to skip through the beginning part, because this beginning part is about the polyvagal theory, and being the polyvagal meetup group, I'm going to assume that you've all have some grounding in the polyvagal theory. But I will start with just a little bit about who has nightmares, and really it helps to understand the triggers for nightmares. And they are linked to post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, higher suicide risk, and in general, all forms of psychological disturbance. They're common in childhood, I think, because our nervous system is developing when we're children. So we're much more easily activated. And I think that our dreams, nightmares and just dreams in general, give us a picture of what our nervous system is doing. And they're also more common for women. And research shows that nightmares need two conditions. They say a trait and a trigger. So a propensity for highly sensitive responses, or trauma history, and a trigger, meaning something in the environment that brings it into our body in that moment. And they're suggesting that highly sensitive people are more prone to nightmares. And I'm wondering about this in light of polyvagal theory and the understanding that our developing nervous system learns to regulate based on the early environment and the first relationships with our initial caregivers, and how if we have a really soothing environment, our nervous system learns to regulate in a different way than if we don't. And that those people that haven't got the same, wonderful safe nest to be born into have got nervous systems that are more prone to difficulties, and those people would be more prone to nightmares, although they wouldn't necessarily be named as trauma survivors. So they've differentiated trauma nightmares and what they call idiopathic nightmares, meaning we don't know what causes them. But I think, especially with all the reading and treatment of nightmares I've done, is that all nightmares are really indication of a nervous system activation in a system that hasn't had the sense of safety that maybe the luckier ones have. And there's, if you look at the early adversity and ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences studies, you can see that things like things that are difficult for a child may not be considered traumatic in a sort of study, but things like maternal separation. If your mother, for example, when you're very young, had to be hospitalized for a while because she was sick, this isn't considered a trauma, but it would be very traumatic to a little one to have have their mother disappear or their main caregiver and not know why. Or, just I think a lot of things that happen to children are traumatic to the child, but not necessarily considered so. So I think if you take that into consideration, that all nightmares are related to a traumatic or nervous system upset in some way. So one of the things that I noticed when I was doing all of this research and thinking about nightmares and nightmare content was how neatly the content of nightmares maps onto the nervous system threat responses, which makes me think that, nightmares are a picture of our nervous system's response to threat. So these categories are the most frequent nightmare themes. And this is according to a content analysis done maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Thousands of dreams were studied. And so the most common nightmare theme is this failure or helplessness, which is an immobility response. And then there's physical aggression, being chased. Those are fight-flight responses. So accidents, I'm not sure how to categorize, but you can see how neatly these main nightmare themes map onto the autonomic nervous system response to threat. And it's also true that it's not just humans that have nightmares, it's all mammals dream and possibly birds as well. And that these nightmares would have to be not just explained in terms of our human psychology, but in terms of our threat survival as an animal. And so what I think is happening is when we have a threatening event, our emotions get aroused as a way to what's really well established is anything that gets an emotional response is much more easily remembered. And it's because if it has something frightening or scary, it is a threat to our survival, and our bodies are designed to remember those things. And so dreaming is implicated in consolidating our memory and regulating our emotion. And so what I dream about it as a way to put it into our network of memory. And then once that emotion has done its job and made it memorable, then the emotion can dissipate. But in nightmares, this cycle repeats. And I'm going to talk about this in terms of recognize this felt sense polyvagal diagram. And so the top half, you see the line that's sort of near the middle, which is safety. The top half are the dorsal vagal immobility responses and the sympathetic fight-flight responses, and the hybrid state in the middle. Those are all the states where the body isn't feeling safe. And what can happen in post-traumatic stress injury in general is that the nervous system cycles between sympathetic response, where maybe the system is overwhelmed, and then it will go into a collapse, and back through sort of around and around this loop. With if there isn't a sense of safety instilled in the system, it can get stuck in this recurrent looping. And this, I think, explains a lot about why we see the kinds of things we do in post-traumatic stress, where nightmares repeat memories cannot be consolidated. It feels as if the trauma is still happening now, because the dreaming and our sleep are trying to lay down these trauma, but it's not working the way it should because of the overactivation of the nervous system. So when we introduce safety into the dreams themselves, there's a way that it really stops this cycle. It really works. And it's important to know about, because when we treat other aspects of trauma, there are a lot of times that the dreams themselves continue, that even when you treat other symptoms of post-traumatic stress injury, the nightmares continue beyond that, and sometimes for a lifetime. So they need to be looked at directly if that's the case. And another really important thing to know is that there is a very strong link between nightmares and suicide risk. And there's numerous studies that have replicated this, but probably the most alarming one was done, I'm going to say 8 years ago, maybe. I'd have to look it up. I can give you the reference, but they studied about 170 inpatients that had been hospitalized for a suicide attempt. And they looked at how frequently they had nightmares. And those who had frequent nightmares were 400% more likely to reattempt suicide than those who didn't. So it's really a strong differentiating factor. If we have frequent nightmares, it's really flags a person for suicide risk if they have it. So it's another really strong reason to treat nightmares and to ask about them, because it can be life-threatening. And I think it's because when people have all of the things that go with a deep trauma and recurrent flashbacks and memories, and they can't even get the relief during sleep, it feels hopeless to them. And so there's a way that I think introducing this simple idea that you've actually just experienced of imagining the dream forward gives them a sense of agency, gives them a sense of hope. There's actually something I can do. And that's what Matthias's client said in this study, was really, he said, I now feel like I have control on the dream versus the dream controlling me. And it can change the world for people. I mean, just think about when you have a period in your life where you don't get a decent sleep and how difficult that is. And if you then are going to sleep and not sleeping, but also having deep struggles in your nightlife, then it feels like there's no relief. So it's very important if you're working with people who have suicide risk to ask about their nightmares and treat them. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is that in the nightmare literature, they treat all nightmares the same. And what you can see in this diagram and in the nightmare content is that some nightmares represent an immobility response and some represent a fight-flight. And they're very easy to see by their content. And what we know is that if there's an immobility response, there's more shutdown, there's more dissociation, that this is a longer path to healing, that it's going to take longer. It's going to be another step of introducing safety in a way that is where you have to be patient and really be sure that it's reaching the person, because we know that in these states where there is less of a sense of safety, the social engagement system isn't on. And so there's a way that you can offer a sense of connection, and it might not be picked up. It might take longer. And it also is true in the trajectory of trauma treatment, that when somebody's got a dissociative response, it's probably due to either really unintegratable information or very early before there were explicit memories laid down. And so it can give you a sense of how to treat and how to understand the trajectory of treatment. And what I found in my initial study, even though this wasn't what I was looking for, was that what happens with the dreams is that they actually go through a progression from immobility to flight to fight as the person gets better. That nightmare content changes toward more activated, more masterful responses, and then toward dreams that are underneath in the bottom of the loop, dreams about playfulness and dreams about engagement and safety. And so you can actually use the dreams to diagnose and also track progress. And it's a really a very helpful way of tracking, because it's better than asking someone for their subjective opinion. Dreaming happens without our active control, so it's a true picture, I think, of how they're doing. All right, I'm just looking at the time. Okay, so let me I'm going to give you save a little bit of time for questions. I just want to make sure that I cover the important things I want to say here. So I think that nightmares are an indication of a nervous system that doesn't feel safe, and they do reflect a history of trauma. And there's a way that I think they're the body's attempt to regulate, but that when they recur and when we're in a cycle, just repeat, that the nightmares don't fix themselves and they should be treated. So that's kind of stressing the same thing I've already said. And yes, some dreams that are nightmarish are not all bad dreams. When do nightmares need clinical attention? Well, when they're frequent and they cause distress and disrupt sleep and mood, and typically for a diagnosis, if you use that diagnosis, it's at least 3 times a week, but it really is mostly about how the person experiences them, if they're causing distress, and especially if they are contributing to suicidal ideation. And the other thing is that children normally have nightmares. That's a developmental stage. But if they are continue past the age of around 9 or 10, they're more likely to become chronic. So I would say if you have a child that's in that age 9, 10, 11, and their nightmares are continuing and repetitive, that it would be good to treat them, because otherwise they're more likely to continue into adulthood. And also in adolescents that have frequent nightmares, this can predict mental illness. Yes, I talked about this robust nightmare suicide link, and the study was in 2009 by Sjostrom. So this is just in a nutshell the protocol I've developed for nightmare relief. And the first thing is to instill a sense of hope and positive expectation. And that's really especially true when people are feeling hopeless or suicidal. And it's just been shown in general in treatment that if people expect it to work, it's got a much more greater likelihood of working. And so you can honestly do this, because the research into nightmare treatment is it's very robust, and it really does show that these treatments help. And I'm working on trying to find ways to make them more helpful and find the gaps in the research. And I think some of them are the things I've named about creating a calm body to start, and differentiating between the immobility, the type nightmares, and the more activated ones. That those are different levels of intensity of trauma and different treatment trajectories. So we instill hope in, I often will just tell people, and this is true, that I've worked with hundreds of nightmares now, and every single time the person has had some kind of a shift. And sometimes it's been, the nightmare has completely stopped, but it always does something when you do this. It seems like I see it as a process of opening up whatever is driving the nightmare in the body and dissipating the charge, finding a way to talk about it, to help a person feel more comfortable, and just dissipating the charge. And it then has a ripple effect, in that when you treat a nightmare, typically all other symptoms of trauma are reduced by about half. So it helps with the daytime symptoms as well. So then we'll do some calming or clearing a space from focusing that we did, and then bring back the dream. And you want to bring it back just enough to touch into it. You have to manage the activation or the overwhelm. You don't want to re-traumatize them, but at the same time, you need to have a little bit of a sense of what you're working with. If you're going to dissipate the charge, you have to find it first. Then this is finding and embodying help. And so that's the resource that we picked up. And you can look around in the dream for a resource, or if it's a really terrible dream and doesn't have any help within it, to find and embody help the way I asked you. You found a safe place or a safe person, finding a sense of safety in your body before you would ask the dream to carry forward. And then once you have a new dream ending, it's a really good idea to consolidate that new dream. And I suggest people journal it, or they draw a picture of it, or they imagine that new dream ending as they're going to sleep. And what happens is it seeds this ending and it gives the dream somewhere to go. So if it's a recurring dream, if it starts the same way, once you've done this process, it doesn't end the same way, because there's an avenue for it to go now. Where it would be stuck, it becomes unstuck. And in fact, I think when the nightmares stop, what I think happens is the dream, rather than waking them up, it just carries forward in the ways that are more resolved and feel better. And the person may not wake up, may not even remember it. So they may actually be having the nightmare, but don't know it because it feels resolved. So some clinical considerations. Wait, I'm going to skip this because here is a link. There's my email address if you want this article, a free version, and there's a link here as well that just links you to the free version if you wanted to skip the email process. And in the brief time we have, I'm going to stop sharing. I can take a question or two.
I think I'll bring you back to gallery view, Leslie, so we can see everybody.
Yeah, I've already done that. Yeah, I can see
Okay,
everyone.
great. There we go.
So did Jane have your hand up? I saw you wave.
Yeah, I can't find the yellow hand.
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah. Thanks, Leslie. Really, this is an awesome presentation. It sounds a lot to me like active imagination from my time in Jungian analysis, but with more attention to the state of the body before doing the active imagination. And I wonder if that's a connection that you make in doing this.
Yes, absolutely. That is my first training is in Jungian dream work, and it's dreaming the dream onward. And in fact, I started doing this before I knew about all the imagery rehearsal work. And I really, I'm kind of miffed actually that they don't credit Jung for this idea, because it is initially his idea. But yeah, that is exactly where it's come from, is from Jung. And before I pick up, there's a couple hands up I see in the chat. Nightmares can be a form of implicit memory. Absolutely, they can. And then sleep paralysis and then REM behavior disorder, those are all relevant and can be treated in a similar way. If you dissipate the charge, those parasomnias can also be helped. There's more I could say, but I don't have time, so I'll go to Sandy.
I'm working with a person right now, and we've been doing a lot of centering and focusing. Because of her trauma background, the person that she kind of sees as her safe person, I'm not really, like, from what she's reported, she's not a safe person in this woman's life, but she's choosing her to be safe. And I'm just wondering, like, should I just go with that, or should I encourage her to look at something else? Or I'm just not sure, when you have a person who perhaps is choosing something that doesn't look safe, what do you do then?
That's interesting. The first thing I do with this particular dream work is I look around the dream itself for an ally, or to find an ally from the dream world, because it's when they're dreaming that safety is maybe more available if it comes directly from the dream. So that might be a way around it. The other thing is to really observe when she invokes this person as a safe person. There may be states where that person is safe and states where they're not. And if it feels like it's creating a sense of safety in her, if it's working for her, I would say it's okay. And if it's not, then I would gently try to find a way to shift it towards something safer. But I would honor her choice if at all possible.
I think
That's what we've been going with.
Perfect.
But this is also a place where, you know, through a polyvagal lens, we would go to the body. We would ask into the body, does this person bring ventral energy into the body? And it's the body that knows whether, you know, it's somewhere in there as you work with it over time, because it could be a trauma bond, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
We have to wrap. Do you want to take one more, Leslie? It's been wonderful.
I'll take Nina's question and then we'll end there. Hi, Nina.
Okay.
So my question is about when we have the people that we're working with who are in the kind of shut down dorsal turtle phase, it's very hard for them to access their imagination, create a change in the ending, etc. And so I was wondering if you had any words about that. By the way, that presentation was just mind-blowing. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. So one of the things that I think can help is to think about when somebody's in this immobilized state is how to infuse energy into the, it's like they need to wake up. And so not just about, you know, first accessing the imagination, but creating some aliveness. And so you might want to invite them, instead of asking for a resource in a typical way, you could ask around a dream image. What image in here feels the most alive or enlivening, or can't access it via their dreams, to just think about ways to activate have to pass through activation before you can get to ventral. And Jan and I have had some talks about that, and I think that isn't always the case when people are accustomed to finding their way to safety more directly. But if they can't, then there's a way to think about adding some energy, adding some life, however they do that. And once there's some life force, then maybe their imagination will carry it forward. And I think we're going to have to leave it there. I wish I had more time to
Really
talk
awesome.
about this.
Thanks so much,
Yeah, you're
Leslie.
welcome.
That was so wonderful. Thanks everybody for coming. Next month we have Rashawn. Can you say a little bit about next month? Is it posted yet? You're muted. You're muted.
I don't think it's posted yet, but it's Heather Abernethy. Abernethy, and she's an anesthesiologist.
She is, and she's also a teacher. She has a course on the PVI website. She's a wonderful person, wonderful speaker, really charismatic speaker. So yes, we'll get that up for you soon. And thank you again, Leslie. That was really fantastic.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Yeah.
And someone asked me if it's okay to email questions. If you didn't
Bye.
need to ask it, you can
Thank you.
email me.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Be well and safe.
Ciao.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming.
Ciao a
Wonderful
tutti,
to see.
grazie. Bye.
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 That's it.
Thank you, Leslie.
Nice to see you, Matthias.
You're so precious.
Thank you, Leslie. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Leslie. Thank you very much. Thank you immensely. Bye.
Oh, you're welcome,
Bye.
Sabrina.